Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove here today with another omnibus review. And today I'm going to do a little bit of, I guess you could call a retro review, just because I'm looking at a book here which has been out of print for a while now, unfortunately. This is the Avengers Omnibus Volume 2, the second volume of the omnibus line collecting the classic Silver Age Avengers stuff. This, I think, is so far the only printing there's ever been of this book. This came out back in 2015. So really, along with Volume 1 and I think maybe even 3 and 4 are out of print now, I'd say this is particularly overdue for a reprint. Now next year will be the 60th anniversary of the Avengers first appearing, so maybe, fingers crossed, we get some announcements soon about this stuff getting reprinted and giving people a chance to pick it up if they missed out and would like to get it. But with that in mind, I'm going to do an overview of the book today and flick through, showcase it, share some of my thoughts on the material, as I always do, and maybe just help you ahead of time to maybe plan and decide as to whether or not this is a book you would be interested in picking up when the opportunity may arise. So let's take a look at it then. We've got the standard cover here. Now, keeping in mind this may not necessarily all be the same. If they reprint it, it might be a different cover option. I suspect it would be the same, but you never know 100%. But it's a really cool Alex Ross cover. I think it's one of the better ones that he's done for different Marvel omnibuses over the years. I just think it's really cool. You've got a large cast of characters on show there, all looking great. The one thing that would almost definitely be different if they reprint it is the spine font. That would probably reduce to being about that big. But other than that, I suspect it would be the same. On the back then, we get the cover gallery. And the collection here features Avengers 31 to 58, Annuals 1 and 2, and a crossover with X-Men issue 45. The next big chunk of Avengers material from the Silver Age, basically. And the big thing that happens in here, the highlight of the book for me, is the arrival of the great big John Buscema when he came on as regular artist of the Avengers and really helped elevate this series to another level. We've got the writing of Roy Thomas and Stan Lee in here. It's basically the tail end of Stan Lee's run writing the series before Roy Thomas took over, and the final issues of Don Heck as penciler as well before Buscema came on. So I suppose I'll give a spoiler warning here, just because I will flick through the book in some detail, maybe talk about some of the plot points. Of course, these are old comics, but that doesn't mean necessarily that everybody's read them and knows what goes on, and some people may still want to experience this stuff fresh, so fair enough if you want to, but fair warning. Yeah, I might therefore spoil some stuff you don't want to see / hear. So then we'll jump into the book. We start with issue 31, volume 1 having left off with issue 30. As I say, we go through the tail end of Stan Lee's issues as writer here. So he carried on until issue 35, at which point Thomas took over. And during this time, we're also seeing the artwork here of Don Heck, who I think did a good job on this series. I will be honest and say Don Heck is not one of my favourite artists, either from this time or more generally in comics. There's just artists whose work I much prefer. But that is not to criticise him here, because I think he does a good job on this series. But I have to say that I do think when John Buscema comes on, things just move on to a whole other level. It's just a different ballpark, really, when he comes into the series. In terms of the team itself, we've seen the return here of Goliath, formerly Giant Man, Hank Pym, and the Wasp coming back to the Avengers lineup. And we also see plenty of other characters coming and going. This is really the era, I suppose, where the Avengers becomes a quote-unquote revolving door of members, where people are sort of coming and going, different characters are featuring periodically in the team's lineup, and that really helps to keep it fresh, in my opinion. So as I say, we've got Giant Man / Goliath and the Wasp are back in it here. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver kind of join the team, then they leave a team. Black Widow doesn't officially join the team, but she starts hanging out with Avengers a lot in here. We also get Hercules joins the team, and I can't remember if it's in this volume. To be fair, it might be in the third volume of issues, where Black Panther comes in. But we do get the introduction of Vision towards the back end of this book, so that's obviously a pretty significant moment for Avengers and Marvel history in general. The coming of the Vision. I think Behold the Vision. That's that famous cover, isn't it? We'll get to it soon enough anyway and showcase that. It's certainly one of the highlight issues in here. But yeah, just some good, fun stories being told at this point in time. In his introductions, there are a couple of lengthy introductions in here from Roy Thomas. This is where Hercules joins the team as well, I think issue 38. But yeah, a couple of lengthy introductions from Roy Thomas, and he, as always, writes some very insightful stuff in here. The guy loves to write, and I'm very glad that that's the case, because he really writes some very interesting introductions for stuff like this. Gives a lot of information of behind-the-scenes facts and trivia that can actually really enhance the reading experience when you have the added context of why some decisions were made. Just a really fun read overall, though. I think this is where the Avengers really starts to get good. The first volume is definitely interesting from that historical perspective to see the early Avengers stories. In here, though, I think it really takes a leap and becomes a genuinely fun comic series to read that, for the most part, holds up pretty well, despite its age. You know, seeing, as I'm sure you can see looking through some of this artwork, plenty of other characters are showing up. Hercules is actually a really fun addition to the team when he comes in. He's the kind of much-needed strongman figure that the team had really lacked since Thor had left the book, and Iron Man for that much as well. When they left the book back in issue 15, they didn't really have one of those, you know, kind of super strong, brutish characters who can just have a great physical fight with someone. Hercules brought that back to the team, so a smart move, I think, bringing him in. Because at this point, Stan Lee was still adamant that Iron Man and Thor shouldn't join the Avengers. He didn't want them in the team because they were featuring in their own solo series, which is why a lot of the characters, well, all the characters really, except for Cap, who feature in the Avengers during this era, were ones who didn't feature in their own stories. So that's like Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Hercules, Black Panther when he turns up, Vision obviously. All these characters, oh, and the Black Knight. I think the Black Knight comes in here as well. But all these characters, of course, were not featuring in their own books, therefore they were free for use here. And that was basically the logic behind who could be an Avengers team member during this point in time. This is where the Red Guardian first gets introduced. So pretty cool first appearance there. And that's just a pretty awesome Hydra. We're into the John Buscema artwork at this point, by the way. And yeah, you can just really see the added quality that he brings to the book, at least in my opinion. I think he does a great job, especially when he starts inking himself, which isn't at this point. For example, he's got Vince Colletta inking him here, who is... Vince Colletta, not one of the great inkers, in my opinion. The guy just rushed things. He was basically known for being able to meet deadlines. So he was quick, and that was a valued skill. But in so doing, if you look at a lot of his inking, you can tell a lot of the detail from the pencils is lost. And, you know, it happened a lot with Jack Kirby's pencils as well. It's happening here with Buscema's. But as of about issue, I think 50 or 51, John Buscema kind of put his foot down and said, I want to ink myself because I know my artwork better than anyone else. I can bring out the best in it. And yeah, thankfully they let him do that. There are a couple of issues where John Buscema doesn't do it, though. There's quite a few fill-in issues periodically throughout this time. This is the first annual, though. This was by Don Heck. In fact, it was because Don Heck was working on this first annual, that's why Buscema actually had to come onto the regular series and illustrate those stories. And he did such a good job that they ended up keeping him on that and moving Don Heck over to work on other stuff. I think, though, if you are a fan of Avengers, if you're interested in Silver Age comics in general, then I'm pretty sure you would enjoy this. Obviously, it's, you know, it's of its time. I mean, everything is of its time, isn't it? But you know what I mean. It's dated in some ways, but I think that the Roy Thomas, John Buscema stuff is noticeably less dated, probably, than the, you know, the very early Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stuff. I always found that Roy Thomas, his writing could be a bit more accessible sometimes than Stan Lee's if you're not into comics of this time generally. But overall, it is a book that I recommend. You know, I am quite biased, admittedly, because I'm a big fan of Silver Age Marvel. So for me, pretty much any of the stuff from this era is stuff that I'm happy to recommend. But I always want to put that little disclaimer out and say that, you know, if you're not into old comics, it may or may not be so much for you. This is the story here, I think, that crosses over with X-Men. You see in Magneto and Toad. Really cool looking, like, weird Toad as drawn by Buscema. Yeah, this is the Black Knight, though. This is where they bring him back into the book. Well, not so much bringing him back. Previously, the Black Knight had been a villain, and this is a different guy who takes up the Black Knight mantle and becomes a hero. And I believe he joins the team. I actually can't remember if he joins the Avengers right about this time or if it's a bit later on. They started making more of a point, though, of drawing Janet Van Dyne in all kinds of different outfits, though. I think they made a specific point, according to Thomas, of drawing her in a different outfit regularly to really emphasise the kind of fashionista aspect of her character. Letter pages, of course, included throughout here. I've flicked through a few of them already, but as I mentioned before, in other books like this, they're always a fun inclusion. I like to see them, get that insight into what readers of the time were feeling about these books. With Hercules being on the team, they also start to really expand the kind of Greek mythological aspect of the Marvel Universe, bringing in characters like Zeus and other members of the Greek pantheon, which all cool in my book because, yeah, I've always been a bit of a fan of the kind of Greek and Roman, Norse mythology, all that stuff. Pretty interesting, pretty fascinating things to read, so it's always cool when it gets incorporated into the comics, as far as I'm concerned. Of course, it was already being done at this point in the pages of Thor. So Thomas was kind of thinking, well, if we can have Odin and Asgard and Loki and all that, why not bring some ancient Greek stuff in as well? So yeah, here's where Black Panther, I think, first encounters the Avengers. I don't think he joins the team at this point. It's been a while since I read this stuff. You know, I've got so many things on my reading list that I could do with rereading to refamiliarize myself with. Because it's been probably maybe 3 or 4 years since I read this now. It's been a fair while. But I know for a fact that I remember last time I went through this stuff from the beginning, it was definitely around about, you know, this sort of point in this second volume where I started to get really hooked on the Avengers and just kept, kind of binged it from here, really, up through the end of volume 4. Yeah, so Black Panther is hanging out with the team now at this point. Although interesting to see that alternative mask that he's wearing at this point, where it's more like a Batman cowl than a full face mask. Can't remember exactly when he goes back to the full mask exactly, but yeah, interesting. Hopefully you're getting a good idea, though, as I flick through here, as to what the book is like. I mean, these are the sort of pages now where we've got Buscema just really kind of going all out. And I think he really is one of the all-time great artists, and certainly his run on this book is up there with his most notable work. I think this cover, though, this is Annual 2. Pretty sure that was the DM variant cover for this omnibus originally. So therefore, could well be the DM variant again. So here, yeah, it's another case of the annual, though, not being drawn by Buscema. It's Don Heck again, along with Werner Roth, coming on to draw this one. Black Panther back in his full face mask again. Yep. Okay, so I guess it's around about here that changes. Aha, the Vision. I was hoping I wouldn't flick past that. This is such a cool cover. I really like this. The use of that kind of scarlet colour, almost foreshadowing his connection with Scarlet Witch in a way. Not deliberately, of course, but retrospectively kind of looks that way. But this is where we get the Vision, and I love the way that Buscema draws the Vision as a character. I mean, even just this opening page here, with him flying through the rain, just beautiful. And such a highlight story in this book and Avengers history as a whole. It's just really cool. So the Vision, I believe, starts out as a creation of Ultron, and he's supposed to be attacking the Avengers, but quickly things change so that, of course, he becomes a team member. He kind of realizes that he has no reason to fight the Avengers, starts to question those orders, that programming, and becomes much more of a kind of logical and rational being capable of making his own decisions. Actually, though, I really like this final sequence, this little epilogue, where after Ultron's eventual defeat, this kid just kicks his head. Really cool. So, even an android can cry. So this is the final issue collected in here. And this, again, really, really great artwork in here. I mean, it's been great up to this point, but it just seems like these last couple of issues that get to this point here feature some really beautiful stuff. That splash page, I love that. Always been an iconic image to me. I've seen it on posters, t-shirts. Very cool stuff. And there's I think it's the final panel. Here we go. That final panel of Buscema drawn Vision. Even an android can cry. Powerful stuff. Love that. And already, you know, just a couple of pages into the Vision's publication history, and some great character development for him as we see that this is not just some robot. He is going to be something more complex and interesting than that. Really cool. And that obviously sets things up nicely to keep going in Volume 3. I do have Volume 3, so I will cover that soon. Let me know if you'd be interested in me covering it sooner rather than later, because I got kind of distracted after I did Volume 1 of Avengers. I've done a whole bunch of other stuff since then, so it's been a while since I got to this book. But if you would like to show off Volume 3, then I can do that soonish. Just let me know. This not brand X stuff, though, you see it in the back of a lot of Silver Age books. I don't like it at all. It's just painful to read. It's not funny. It's supposed to be satire and parody and comedy, but it's just not entertaining. I don't like it. But there are some cool extras in the back. A lot of original character sketches and covers and panels. Really nice to see the original pencils. I love when they can include those, because, you know, when you see it in the comic itself, as beautiful as it can look, the artwork, details do inevitably get lost in the inking process. So nice to see original pencil work. That's not something I remember being part of the book, but that sometimes happens, by the way. You know, sometimes you get these little bits of extra trim on a page. Not ideal, but considering it's just one page in the back of the book as an extra, not the end of the world, really. But that caught me off guard, I won't lie. I couldn't remember that being a part of this book. I guess that shows it's been a while since I flicked through it. But anyway, hopefully that's been interesting and insightful or useful, giving you an idea of whether this is a book you would be interested in picking up. Yeah, thanks for watching as always, guys. I hope that, as I say, it was of some use to you. Let me know what you think of Avengers from this era, of this book itself, John Buscema's run on the series. All good stuff in my opinion. Definitely gets a recommendation from me. Whether you can find it somewhere now as it's out of print for a decent price, or maybe if you're watching this at some point down the line when a reprint has been announced, maybe this helps you make your mind up. But again, thanks as always for watching. Appreciate it, and I'll be back again soon to talk about something else.